Hey guys, Delina here of Delina Watson Designs, and today I'm going to show you hopefully a quick tutorial on how I created this photo using this super cute digital background by Squijoo.com. And the first thing I'm going to do is show you how I downloaded it, and you just go to Squijoo.com, and then if you search Dinosaur, it's this one right here. It's the Dinosaur Digital Backdrop Mountain Field. So you're just going to click download now and save it onto your computer. It saves as a zip folder, a zip file. So I'm going to show in folder and I'm going to right click and extract all. And then I can delete the zip folder. And then whenever you go into the folder that you extracted, you'll find the digital background there. And then you can just right click and open with Photoshop. Okay, so here's the digital background that we're going to be working with. And whenever I work on composites, the first thing that I look for, and by far to me the most important thing, is to look for the lighting source. So like in this background, it looks like an overcast day. It's not immediately apparent where the light is coming from. You can tell by the dinosaur that the light is on the top part of the dinosaur, and then it's darker on the legs here. So that just means that there's some sort of light source above, but it's not like a sunset or anything like that where you can actually see the sun in the background. So, with that in mind, whenever I went and I took the pictures of my son today, I shot his pictures in open shade, and this is the picture that I took. So I chose open shade just in the in the backyard. I put him pretty close to the edge of our house, so that the background isn't very busy. Like there's not a lot of trees and just there's not too many things going on back here. Um, and the reason for that is because that will ultimately help you select out your subject. The less busy your background is, the easier it is to to select. Also, another thing is in this background there's grass. So what I always try to do is whenever I'm shooting my subjects for a particular background, I always shoot them on the ground that's similar to the background. So like I put him in the grass because there's grass here. If there was another background where I wanted him on rock, then I would probably just put him on a sidewalk or my driveway, just something that has more of a rocky texture. Um, because you can always blend in colors and things like that. And I will actually show you how I do that because the grass here is a totally different color than the grass here. Um, but that's very easy to change with literally I think just one layer. Okay, so another thing that I do is I don't shoot wide open. Whenever I shoot for composites, I want everything sharp. Um, it will make it so much easier for hair selections, especially because if you shoot wide open, then more than likely you've got something that's blurred, especially if your subject is facing the side. If you shoot wide open and you're close enough to your subject, um, then half of their face might be slightly blurred. And what that's going to do is it's going to make it a lot harder for you to select it out in Photoshop. And you want Photoshop to do most of the work for you. So I think I shot this at like f3.5 and my shutter speed was at like 1/400ths of a second. And then my ISO was at 400. Um, but he's perfectly sharp. You can see how the background is a little bit blurred. But I didn't shoot wide open. I shot it at f3.5. Okay, so with with my subject's photo pulled up here, for the selection process, I like to go to the quick selection tool. I know you can use the pen tool and stuff. This is just how I do it. I'm trying to make Photoshop do most of the work for me. So I click the quick selection tool and then I click select subject. And it did a pretty good job. It did miss the tip of his nose. So I'm just going to go in there and it's on the plus. So I'm just going to go and just grab that. Okay, and then I'm just going to do a quick look. See that depth of field right here? It missed his shoulder. And I can fix that here in a little bit. Okay, so I'm just making sure that the important parts are added. Okay, so I'm going to grab the edge of his shorts right here. And then I'm going to grab the bottom of his shorts right here. Okay. Okay, now down here with the feet, I am actually going to grab some of this grass. And I'll show you why here in a little bit. I'm going to just go ahead and grab that huge chunk in the middle too. Okay, so I'm just going to grab all that. And for the most part, that looks pretty decent. I don't really want that. Okay, so now I'm going to click Select and Mask, which is right up here at the top. Okay, so what this does is the red is everything that's not selected. And then, of course, you have your subject that doesn't have anything on. You can change your view modes right here. I like to keep it on overlay, but it's just whatever you prefer. You basically just need to know what you have or haven't selected. And then you can change the opacity of it right here. So that's what my selection would look like. And then you can turn down the opacity so that you can still see what you haven't selected. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in and I can already tell right now there's the chin part and the forehead and the shoulder right here just from the top part. I'm going to leave the hair alone because that actually did a really good selection, and um, that's another reason why I like not shooting wide open is for those hair selections, and you'll see it here in just a second. But I'm going to go over here and I'm going to make sure that I'm on my brush tool. And these buttons right here, the plus is to add to your selection, and the minus is subtract from selection. So I need to add in his forehead. So I'm just going to brush that back in. I'm going to add in to his chin down here. And I'm just going to very carefully just brush it in as best I can because that depth of field and also the coloring of the my house, the coloring of my house and the coloring of him and this edge right here, you know, Photoshop just had a hard time determining what the edge was. Okay, and it looks like I need to get the tip of his nose right here. I probably could have shot this at f4.0 instead of 3.5, and I don't know why I didn't, but okay, so I'm just going to take the subtraction part and I'm going to just, actually I need to see where that's at better. Oh, I actually need to add. I'm taking away from you, kiddo. Okay, just subtract, just go through and just go all the way around. Start on one side and then go all the way down. Okay, so right here, I need to add to the shoulder. Just adding like that. Okay, and I'm just gonna go down and make sure that everything is added. This is probably the longest part of the composite, actually, is just this part right here. Just going through and making sure every important piece is added. Okay, so right here, I need to take away. So I'm going to select minus, and I'm just going to get rid of this little bit right here. And just keep going down. Get rid of this little bit right here. Okay, so now this part of his pants right here, his little shorts, it's not looking too good. Looks like Photoshop had a little bit of a hard time with it. So I'm just gonna go, and it's okay if you get like just a little bit of the green in there because the background is grass. So, I mean, it's not gonna be that noticeable. Okay, so on his leg right here, it looks like there's a little bit of an issue with this. And you know, our legs aren't all crooked like that. So this is actually a trick that I picked up somewhere. Okay, so I'm gonna take away, and this little trick, it comes in handy so much, but it's um, making straight lines. So like if I click, okay, hold on. If I click right here and say I want to make a straight line, I can hold down shift and then click wherever I want, and it makes a straight line. So whenever I'm using it in situations like this, where I want to take away it, but I want my son's leg to be straight. So I'll click here, hold shift, and click here, and see that just made it a straight line. So I can click here, hold shift, left click the mouse, hold shift, click there, left click, hold shift, click, and see how that fixed it like super fast without um, any weird mouse movements. Because I don't know about you, but I'm not that great with holding a mouse steady. So not to mention I'm left-handed, so trying to do that with my right hand is basically impossible. So yeah, really just a few clicks right there and we have a straight leg. Okay, so this leg actually turned out pretty good. But I am going to go in with the plus, and I'm just going to grab the edge of his shorts right here. Right there. And then this little bit right here, because that will look like a chunk taken out. And then the edges of his knuckles, where Photoshop couldn't tell where the edge was exactly. Okay, and then his arm looks decent. Looking good. Okay, that looks like a good selection right there to me. Okay, so I'm going to pull it up, not quite to 100%. Let's go around 80%. Okay, so another trick that I have is whenever you're cutting out your subject, sometimes these edges can be so sharp that whenever you add your subject to the background, it really makes them look very cut and paste. So what I like to do is down here under the global refinements, under feather, I like to add like a pixel, 1 pixel to 2 pixels of feathering, And that just softens that edge right there all the way around, because in the actual photographs, it is, there is some feathering there that you can tell. And then I also like to use the smooth and bump it up just a little bit, anywhere between 10 and 20 usually, and that smooth, jagged edges. And the feathering softened selection edge. So those two right there, adding just a little bit to that makes the edges softened and smoother, and it looks a lot less cut and paste. Okay, so now once that's done, I'm going to output and I'm going to select new layer with layer mask. And I like keeping the layer mask in case I ever need to add anything. I'm just going to click OK. Because basically, if I wanted to add something in, I could. But I'm not going to do that. Okay, so I'm going to rename this to Ian. That's my son's name. He's the reason why I do all of this. Okay, so from here, I'm going to just drag his layer into our digital background that we pulled up earlier. Okay, so now from here, this is the fun part. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to look at is size, proportions. So with your subject's layer selected, press Control or Command T, and that makes it so that you can move your subject around and also resize. So I'm just going to resize him smaller, and I'm going to place him. I'm going to put his feet pretty even with the dinosaur's feet. But also this document it goes from 0 to 6,000 over here. So if I want to keep with the rule of thirds, then that would put him at around 2,000. So that's what I'm looking at right now, is I'm wanting to place him around 2,000, but I'm also wanting to look at his feet to make sure that I'm not making him look like he's floating. So I'm thinking right about here actually looks pretty good. Yeah, so let's just say right about there. And I'm actually going to turn him just a little. It's like he was leaning forward a little bit in the original photo. Okay, so I'm just going to turn him a little bit, and then I'm going to place him to where his face is about where the 2,000 mark is right here. But I want his feet to be far enough down to where whenever I start doing this blending, then he doesn't look like he's floating above the grass. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. I think he needs to be a little bit shorter, actually. Okay, because dinosaurs are big, and my son is only 4, so I know he's going to be, much smaller than this dinosaur here. And I'm looking at the dinosaur's leg in comparison to his little leg right here. Okay, so I actually need to scoot him back over a little bit since I made him smaller. See, the 2,000 is right here, but his face is over here closer to the 1,900. So I'm going to scoot him over a little bit more. Yeah, right about there. Right about there is good. Okay, so I'm going to click this little check mark over here, and that places him. Okay, so the obvious things are he's too bright, and the feet need to be blended in. And when I first started, this was I think by far the most frustrating part, but I've learned some tips and tricks on how to do this. And the easiest way is, shooting your subject on the same ground. Um, but then hue saturation layers, that's where it's at. Because what I'm going to do is this green grass is just a different color from this grass right here. So you can either do hue saturation layers or you can do like a color balance layer. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to match this grass color with the grass color in the background here. So I'm going to go down here to my adjustment, what are they called? Adjustment layers? Yeah, adjustment layers. It's this little circle icon right here. And I'm going to go to hue saturation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip it. I'm going to click this little button right here that clips the hue saturation layer to my subjects layer, meaning that everything that I do with this layer only affects my subject and not the background or any other layer. So the only color that I need to work with is green. So instead of working with all colors under master, I'm going to click this and I'm going to go to greens. And then if I increase the saturation, you can see that that's the selection that we need to work on. So I'm going to lower the saturation. Oh, I can't say that word apparently. I'm going to lower it until I feel like it's getting closer to the saturation or the color of the grass in the background, which that looks pretty good. And then under lightness, if I go this way or that way, just see, I actually like it a little bit darker because there's a lot of dark in the background. And then under hue, or the hue, if I go this way, it makes the grass look bluer. If I go this way, it warms it up. So I'm actually going to lean more towards the yellow side because there are some yellows in this grass. So I'm going to go maybe -20, and that looks pretty blended. But you can see the harsh edges. So this is the trick. Okay, cool. So I'm going to zoom in pretty close here. I'm at like 300% zoomed in. I'm going to go back to my subjects layer on the layer mask with a brush. I'm going to change it to black because I want to erase. And I'm going to change the opacity down to like 20% because I'm not wanting it to be like a drastic, swipe across and it takes everything away. I want it to be a gradual takeaway. So I'm going to make my brush smaller here. And I'm going to go in and I'm just going to brush. I'm going to brush the edges. And since it's only at 20% opacity, it's doing it very gradually. But you can see how some of the grass from the background is starting to show through, but you can still see the grass on my son's feet. So I am actually leaving some pieces of the grass from the actual ground that my son was standing on, but then in certain areas, I'm brushing that away so that the grass from the digital background shows through, if that makes sense. And it also makes the grass less sharp. Okay, so I'm actually going to add some of the grass from him back here because it does look like he's floating just a little bit back here. So I'm actually going to turn my brush to white and I'm going to brush around his foot slowly just to reveal some of that grass in there. And I'm going to brush around his foot so that his foot is fully in focus. Just like that. Actually add some of it in here. Like that. Add some in here. And I mean, my brush is still at 20, it's at 22% opacity. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to view 100% and I'm going to basically zoom out and look at it at 100%. And that looks pretty darn good. Looks pretty good. So just with a hue saturation layer, which if I take that off, you can see the neon green from the grass he was standing on. But I turn that back on and the grass is the same color as the background and it looks like he's actually standing there. That's pretty good. Okay, so moving on. See, I told you it's not that bad. It's not. Put your subjects on grass if your background has grass. Put your subject on a sidewalk or gravel or even the road if your digital background has rocks or something like that in it. And then you can always just use hue saturation layers, color balance, selective color even maybe. Really for the most part I use hue saturation or color balance and just match the color of the ground. That's all you have to do. Okay, but this hue saturation layer, it's white. The layer is white. If you have any other green on your subject, like if your subject was wearing green, then this would also affect the greens elsewhere. So if you only want it to affect this small area down here, what you do is you click on the layer mask for the hue saturation layer, press Control or Command I, and that turns it black, meaning no part of this layer is showing. So what we want to do to make it only show right here by the feet is we'll change our brush to 100% opacity and flow. Since black hides, then that means we need a white brush to reveal. And we're just going to brush with a white brush right where his feet is, right where we want that green to change. And then if you can look at your layer mask right here, you see that little white dot. That means the only part that this is showing is just that white part right there. And that's it. So you can turn it off and turn it on. It only affects the green right here. It doesn't affect any green that's in his clothing or anywhere else on him. So that's how you would do that. Okay, so now it looks like he's really standing there. So now the next thing to focus on is the brightness, shadows, highlights, things like that. So looking at him, he's a lot brighter than back here and the bottom part of the dinosaur here. So my favorite way to start out with this is to go down to my adjustment layers and select levels. I use levels a lot. Okay, so I'm going to clip it so that it only affects his layer and not the background. So it's clipped. Now these right here, these little slider tab things, this one right here affects the blacks. So if you play around with it, It affects the blacks. This one right here is the midtones. This one right here is the highlights. This one right here is the whites whites and blacks here, or shadows. Anyway, you can tell by looking at the little slider thing here. So it goes from white to gray to black. Now this is actually how I make my silhouettes whenever I do the silhouettes that I do. Because if you take this slider over here that's white and you bring it over here to the black side, you can see how it sort of silhouettes your subject out. But I don't want to go that far because that's way too dark for this background. So basically, I just want to look at the bottom part of my subject, and I want to get the bottom part right first. So I think I'm going to go with about 140 on this side. I think that looks pretty decent right here. I don't want to go too dark. So yeah, I think I'm just going to slide that one slider over. Oh, also, if you need to go back and make any changes, like say you maybe went too far over, you would just double click this little part right here, this little jagged thing, and it'll bring your settings back up. So I'm actually going to take the blacks because the dinosaur has a lot of contrast in it. I'm actually going to take this over just a little bit. So that's before and that's after. Now with this, I don't want it showing on the top part of him because the dinosaur has a lot of light showing on the top, so I also want to mimic that on my subject here. But I want it to be gradual, sort of like with the feet. So I'm not going to work with 100% opacity. I'm going to go to about anywhere between 20 and 30. Okay, so since all of the levels adjustment is showing because it's white, that means I need a black brush to hide. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tap the top parts of him like that so that there's not any darkness up here, but it gradually fades into darkness down here. Okay, and you can see on the layer mask, the black is taken off right here. So that's before and that's after. And we're actually getting pretty close to finishing this one. This one is such an easy background to use for like just overcast days and things like that. Okay, so I'm trying to see if I did that enough. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. I don't know if y'all can see this, but I have like this weird box around my subject. If y'all ever have that, just click on your subjects layer and go back to 100% opacity with a black brush and just brush that out. Mine does that. Okay, so I got rid of that little box that was around him. Okay, so from here, if you wanted to, you could add a brightness and contrast layer to your subject, clip it, and then you can increase the contrast. Because the dinosaur has a lot of nice contrast in it. It just depends on your photo. I felt like my son needed a bit more contrast because this is the before, and just look at the tail behind him in comparison to his contrast on him. And then if you add just a little bit, see how his face and everything sort of matches much better. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what it needed. It needed just a little bit of contrast on him. Okay, so from here, I'm I think we're finished. I mean, he looks like he's standing there. I like the blending from the shadows and stuff that match the dinosaur. From here, you could do like a final overall adjustment to bring it all together. And my favorite thing to do with that is go to your adjustment layers and then choose color lookup. And you won't be clipping this to anything because it'll be an overall adjustment. On this first drop down box, go to like crisp warm is one of my favorites. And then just turn the layers opacity down to like 20%. And what that does before and after, it just gives it a little bit of a pop. Yeah, there's my final one. He's actually a little brighter. So you could go to your levels adjustment and then maybe like there, like 90%. But yeah, that looks pretty good. I hope that helped anyone who struggles with blending feet. Um Blending hair is also kind of tricky sometimes, but I really swear by if you don't shoot wide open, then it'll definitely help you select hair and things like that. Um, I lost his eyelash in here, but if you ever need to blend hair or blend eyelashes, which actually I can do that also for you real fast. Squijoo also has amazing hair brushes, and it's the Squijoo Draw Your Own Hair. Um, they also have the hairbrush stamps. So if you have like a subject that has wavy hair or curly hair, you can actually go in and paint hair back in instead of trying to select all of that out of your subject's background. It can start to look pretty funky. So sometimes it's just easier to go in and literally just draw hair back in, just paint it in. And I can actually do that for you real fast. Especially if you have a subject that has like longer hair or like more flyaway type hair. Sorry. Okay, so I'm gonna click the Squeegee brush on hair strands, and it looks like this. The brush does. I'm going to click the top layer of Ian's because this one right here is an overall layer, but this is the last one of Ian's. And I'm going to go to this plus sign box, which creates a new layer. I'm not going to clip it because if I clipped it, then it wouldn't show up on the outside. It would just show up on the inside of his layer. So I'm going to leave it on normal blend mode for now. I'm going to make my brush a lot smaller. And since I have my Wacom tablet on, I'm going to turn these off up here. This is just for like pressure, for opacity and stuff like that because I use a Wacom tablet. Um, so you can either go to this eyedropper tool right here and click a sample of the hair color, and then go back to brush, and it puts the color that you selected right here that you're working with. And if you ever need to change that back to black and white, just click the black and white right here and it goes back to the default. Or on your keyboard, you can hold and press Alt or Option, I think is on a Mac, Alt or Option, something like that. And it automatically turns your cursor into the eyedropper tool without having to click this. So it keeps it on brush, but then whenever you press in Alt, it changes it to the eyedropper, and you can easily just take a sample of hair color and then let go, and it goes right back to the brush. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go in here, and you can literally just brush in hair. If you need, take a sample of the darker color and brush in here. See, like if you need the edges, like say you have some of this the white halo around your subject's hair. Oh, I want that color. Then you can just, brush some hair around it like this. And whenever you zoom out, you don't see that halo anymore, and it actually looks like hair. And what I'm going to do over here, since I want his eyebrows back, I mean not his eyebrows, his eyelashes that were sticking out from this photo right here. So if you zoom in, you can see his eyelashes sticking out, and I love my son's long eyelashes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a layer, but I'm going to create it below him, because if I put it above him, then see how it gets on him too. But if I create the layer below him, then I can create eyelashes. And I'm zoomed into like 700%, y'all. So when you zoom back out to 100%, right about there, you can see the edges of the eyelashes there. It's just little details like that that really make composites come together in the end. Because if you're looking at this, that actually looks like his eyelash, but whenever you zoom in, it's literally just, something that I just drew in. So I'm actually going to name this eyelashes, and then this one right here will be hair. So this is the before and after of his hair, and see how you can see a little bit of the halo from the previous background. And then now you can't. You can also change this to multiply blend mode, but I don't need to because that makes it a little too dark. You can play around with the blend modes on this. Sometimes soft light looks pretty good. But I'm just going to leave it on normal. And then I can actually go in and just clean up this edge right here. There. And see, he's got a little bit of a halo right here too. So, I mean, you can always just go back in and just go on your subject's layer mask and just brush that off. But yeah, there you go. Okay, so view 100%, and you can see just a little bit of the eyelashes, and then you can see a little bit of the hair. You can brush in flyaways, and all that. So yeah, just to make your selections look more realistic, less cut and paste, just little details like that. And to be honest, I think that's it. I really don't need to do anything else to this. Otherwise, the tutorial will just keep on going. Um, But yeah, I think this actually looks pretty good. And I'm pretty impressed with the feet situation here. So I really hope that that helps anyone who's struggling with blending in feet. I know I struggled with it. But yeah, I think that's it, and that is how I created, um, how I blended my subject into this really cute dinosaur background by Squijoo.com. Um, Hopefully I will do some more tutorials for them in the future, and maybe I can show you more on like the hair selections and things like that. But for this one, it was pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward with this one. Um, Not too many lighting scenarios and things like that. So this should be a pretty good background for anyone who's starting out. Um, and so yeah, I think that's it. And thank you so much for watching.